The shepherd Paul. Once upon a time, when a shepherd was taking his flock out to pasture, he found a baby lying in the meadow. How the baby came to be there, no one ever knew, but the kind shepherd looked after the poor little thing and brought it up as his own. Now the years went by, and when the baby, which had been called Paul, was almost grown to be a man, he decided that he would like to go out into the great, big world and seek his fortune, and perhaps even find his parents. "You have been kind to me, foster father," he said to the shepherd, "but I do not wish to be a shepherd all my life." So the shepherd lent Paul a horse and they said goodbye, and off Paul rode. Now, there was one very unusual thing about Paul, apart from the fact that he had been found in a field, that is, Paul was very strong, very strong. He was amazingly strong. Why, even as a lad he could tear trees up by their roots, and when it came to wrestling, Paul could beat anyone he had ever met. Now, as he went on his journey, Paul met, one after the other, 3 strong men, who all liked wrestling. One after the other young Paul beat the 3 men at wrestling, and they all became friends and traveled together. Or Paul thought they were friends. He was to find out differently. One night, as the 4 friends were cooking supper round their campfire, a dwarf came and tried to steal their food, but shepherd Paul caught him and tied him to a tree. However, the next morning the dwarf was gone, and so was the tree. The dwarf had pulled it up at the roots and then escaped down a huge hole in the ground, dragging the tree with him. This all seemed rather strange and frightening, and the 3 men wanted to go on their way, but shepherd Paul said he would go down the hole. Perhaps he would find his fortune there. So the 3 men lowered. When he reached the bottom of the hole, Paul found himself in a sunlit land with a fine castle standing in a nearby meadow. Shepherd Paul walked over and knocked at the door of the castle. A beautiful maiden answered the door. "Go away," she gasped. "A fierce dragon lives here and he will kill you if he sees you." But shepherd Paul was so strong that dragons did not bother him. He slew the dragon without getting out of breath. Then the beautiful maiden told Paul that the dragon was the dwarf in disguise, and that he had kidnapped her from her home in the world above. Waiting only to take all the treasure from the castle, Paul took the maiden back to the hole and called to his friends to pull them up. "Climb into the basket," they called, but when shepherd Paul and the maiden and the treasure reached the top of the hole, the 3 so-called friends grabbed the maiden and the treasure and then let go the rope, so that shepherd Paul and the basket fell back into the earth. Then the 3 men ran off, thinking that they would never see Paul again. But they were wrong. A little fawn had seen what had happened, and the fawn fetched Paul's horse, and between the 2 of them they hauled Paul back up the hole. Paul raced after his faithless friends, and when they saw him, they left the maiden and the treasure and ran off and never came back again. And Paul and the maiden and the horse and fawn and, of course, the treasure went back to the old shepherd, and they all lived happily ever after. The end.